Live from WTVO 17 and your home team. Eyewitness News at 5 starts now.
There's chaos on Capitol Hill as Congress meets to certify the results of the presidential election.
Thousands of protesters gather, invading the Capitol building. President Trump calls in the National Guard after one person is reportedly shot. Good evening. I'm Mimi Murphy.
And I'm Eric Wilson. More than 150 Republican lawmakers have stated they will challenge the results of the 2020 presidential election. But the move may only be to send a message. The GOP members can delay the ceremonial ratification of Joe Biden's Electoral College win during a joint session of Congress, but ultimately they don't have the votes to change anything.
Meanwhile, tens of thousands of President Trump supporters traveled from across the country to the streets of Washington, D.C. to back Trump's unfounded claims that the election was stolen from him. ABC's Andrew Dimbert is tracking the latest from Washington.
One woman shot, the nation's capital on lockdown. Lawmakers being told to hide under desks and in closets as the Capitol building is under siege by violent and angry pro-Trump demonstrators. Sources tell ABC a pipe bomb was found at the Republican National Committee headquarters in D.C. and was safely detonated by law enforcement. Members of Congress who were trapped inside the Capitol reacting to the chaos.
A little bit dicey with people banging at the doors of the House chambers.
Trump supporters from around the nation storming the Capitol, forcing evacuations as Congress ratifies President-elect Joe Biden's decisive Electoral College victory. And after both Republicans and Democrats calling on President Trump to do more to stop the violence, Trump finally releasing a video telling the violent protesters to go home, but not before continuing to stoke the flames by spreading the false claim that the election was stolen from him.
This was a fraudulent election. But we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace.
Joe Biden slamming Trump's response.
I call on President Trump to go on national television now and defend the Constitution.
Leading up to the violence, Trump had been demanding Vice President Mike Pence somehow prevent Joe Biden's win after it had already been certified by the states.
If Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election.
But after 4 years of unwavering loyalty to Donald Trump, Pence showing defiance. In a statement before presiding over the ceremonial Electoral College event, Pence writing, vesting the vice president with unilateral authority to decide presidential contests would be entirely antithetical to the founders' vision laid out on the Constitution. And violent demonstrators can be heard chanting, "We took the Capitol, we took the Capitol," as some lawmakers are being told to prepare to hide under desks and hide in nearby closets. And as President Trump supporters here run wild, the president himself had tweeted about these demonstrations just a couple of weeks ago. To be there, it'll be wild. Andrew Dimbert, ABC News in Washington.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger is in the middle of everything that's happening in the Capitol. He joined us now via Skype. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Sad day.
Right. Tell us what you're seeing.
So, look, it's a mess. And, this is why I've been so outspoken, particularly in the last few months. I've seen the chatter on Twitter. I've seen what's been promised, what's been planned. I've said multiple times, I think there's going to be violence on the 6th. And what I saw today was exactly the culmination of my worst fears. And to watch, I had looked at one point and seen a protester sitting in the chair in the Senate. To watch the disrespect for the People's House is disgusting. And this will be a stain that we're going to have to do some real hard work to get over.
What message do you have for some of these protesters?
Well, go home. Quit believing the false information. When you speak out and you tell people the truth, that's leadership. When you just tell people what they want to hear and pretend like we can go on this false thing of just deeming a new president because of something in the Constitution that doesn't actually exist. It's do your own research, and let's take what happened today. Let's parse this out and realize, how did we get down here? How did that misinformation become fact and reality? And let's do way better as Americans.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, thank you for your time, and we hope that you and your staff stay safe.
Thank you very much.
You can see my complete interview with Congressman Kinzinger over at mystateline.com.
Both Illinois senators, along with Representative Bustos, were also in D.C. when this unfolded. Ari Bruckman joins us now with their reactions.
Mimi, 17th District Representative Cheri Bustos was on the floor at the beginning of the debate, which began around noon. She tweeted out she and other House members on the floor were safe in a secure location. She went on to thank Capitol Police for their actions in, quote, protecting us and our country today. Senator Tammy Duckworth was supposed to speak at the hearing, but never made it to the floor.
I was in the tunnel underneath the Capitol complex headed to the floor when I was turned around by the Capitol Police, and they had to go to a secure location immediately.
And within the last hour, Senator Dick Durbin took to Twitter saying, "This shameful chapter in our nation's history is the real legacy of Donald Trump. On January 20th, we can begin the process of healing the wounds of this country and start to put this national nightmare behind us." Durbin also wrote he doesn't know the damage done to the Capitol building. Mimi?
Ari, thanks. Locally, demonstrators call for lawmakers to side with other U.S. senators challenging the results of the election. The rolling Rally for America swung by Representatives Cheri Bustos and Adam Kinzinger's Rockford offices. Attendees say they support President Trump's claim the election was stolen from him and believe elected officials representing the state line should take a stand.
We don't expect we're going to change Congressman Adam Kinzinger's opinions about President Trump. He's a never-Trumper. Nevertheless, we feel that every congressman should be concerned about a proper, well-conducted election.
The demonstration took place at noon today to coordinate with other Trump rallies across the nation and in D.C.
Weeks after a Rockford police officer was cleared in the shooting of a black man, protesters demand his resignation.
A group's gathered outside Rockford Police District 1. Dylan Saraki joins us live from the scene. Dylan, what inspired this?
Well, Eric, Mimi, a small group of Black Lives Matter protesters have gathered here at District 1 following the arrest of Denzel Dunavant last night. They say Rockford police officer Dominic McNeese used excessive force on Dunavant during the incident. But in a police report written by McNeese, he says he wasn't involved in the altercation. In the report, McNeese says he first tried to stop Dunavant in a parking lot near School Street after believing he was wanted on a warrant. He says Dunavant ran, and 3 scope officers who were in the area started chasing him. When the 3 officers tried bringing him into custody, McNeese says Dunavant bit one of the officers' hands and started fighting with all 3 officers. Eventually, Dunavant was detained and transported to a local hospital for minor injuries. Police say a search of Dunavant produced cocaine. Dunavant was charged with aggravated battery to a police officer, resisting arrest, and possession of a controlled substance. This comes just over a month after Officer McNeese was cleared of any wrongdoing in the shooting of Tyrese Jones. I'll have reaction from protesters coming up later tonight. But for now, live in Rockford for your home team, I'm Dylan Saraki.
Dylan, thanks for the live report.
Survivors of sexual and domestic assault receive an extra layer of protection from abusers.
Michelle Rave shows us how a piece of Illinois legislation we told you about last week will allow victims to mask their home address on public records.
So it's another layer of protection for sexual assault survivors and stalking survivors that we're very excited to see for them.
At the start of 2021, the Address Confidentiality for Victims of Domestic Violence Act expanded to include survivors of sexual assault and stalking.
So many times after a sexual assault or a stalking, survivors feel the need to move because the perpetrator knows where they live. And so this bill ensures that they don't have to give their new address.
The requirements to the survivor or the victim are really just to fill out an online application at the Attorney General's website. And they give their current address, where they believe they're going to move to.
According to Winnebago County State's Attorney Jay Hanley, once an application is accepted, victims and survivors can create a substitute address to be used for public records.
So let's say I lived at 123 Main Street. I can put on my driver's license, I don't put 123 Main Street. I put whatever the designated Attorney General address is. And then when people want to send me mail, they send it to that Attorney General's office address, and then it's forwarded to 123 Main Street where I live.
Hanley says it's another tool to help survivors.
This really has to get to the people that need it. You know, so often survivors of domestic violence aren't really don't know the resources that are available to them. And so for our office, we have victim service providers, and one of the things that we've already talked to those providers about is letting our victims and survivors know that this program is available.
Reporting in Rockford for your home team, I'm Michelle Rave.
Governor J.B. Pritzker announces some coronavirus mitigations will be relaxed in Illinois.
Coming up, a breakdown of what that means for Region 1.
And our temperatures today stayed in the 30s, but the other thing that stayed was the cloud cover and the fog. Find out if we'll see any more rays of sunshine coming up here in the forecast a little later.
You're watching Eyewitness News, your home team, with Eric Wilson, Mimi Murphy, Sports Director Scott Leber, and Chief Meteorologist Candice King.
Parts of Illinois could soon see some loosening of COVID restrictions in the coming weeks.
Governor J.B. Pritzker offered the glimmer of hope during a coronavirus update. According to Pritzker, mitigations could be dropped down to Tier 2 starting January 15th. Tier 3 has been in effect since the end of November. The tighter rules were kept in place over the holidays to prevent spikes of COVID cases. Governor Pritzker says the numbers show it's worked.
We're watching closely in this incubation period post-Christmas and New Year's. I'm cautiously optimistic as there are some early signs indicating that some regions have made real progress and won't reverse that progress this week or next.
To have mitigations lowered, each region will have to have a 7-day positivity rate of under 12%. The State Lines region has been less than that since early December.
Now, your first warned weather forecast with Chief Meteorologist Candice King.
Well, for some, we were able to see a little bit of sunshine kind of peering through some of the clouds and the fog we had from earlier today. But as it's been the same story the last couple of nights, another dense fog advisory going into effect for a portion of south central Wisconsin as well as for northwestern Illinois. That does include you folks in Freeport, out towards Shannon, and then even down in Sterling there in Whiteside County. Now, with the exception of DeKalb and Rochelle, where visibility is down near zero, even down to 1.5 miles, we've seen some improvement. But the expectation is that will go down here as we go through the evening, and we might not see quite as widespread of fog and dense fog as we've had here the last couple of nights, but more locally dense fog through the overnight tonight and then again going into tomorrow. So why, we've talked a little bit about why we've been able to trap that moisture down at the surface, and this time of year it's really hard to kind of break from that cloudy pattern. A couple of reasons going into that. We've got a very low sun angle late December into early January before we start to really kind of see that sun angle go back up as our days get longer and we get closer to the spring and the summer months. So as our atmosphere is kind of like a pot on a stove and the sun angle is like our stove in itself, when we get mixing that takes place in the atmosphere from the heat from the sun, we're able to mix out that moisture. We're able to break up whatever cloud cover, let's say, we may have during the morning hours. This time of year it's hard to do that because with that lower sun angle and limited heating, there's not a lot of mixing that goes on in the atmosphere. So the clouds and the fog, they do persist. Now these next couple of days we might not see the fog as much or as dense because we're getting a little more wind, so that will help. But that cloud cover is going to stick around. Now, there will likely be a couple of breaks in some of the clouds in the days to come, but generally speaking, a mostly cloudy sky. There is a storm system off to our west and southwest, but that's going to continue to bypass us to our south here as we go through this evening. 26 degrees in Galena, 29 in Freeport, 33 still our temperature in Rockford, 31. That's our weather watcher Bob's temperature here in Rockford on the southeast side. We go out to northern Ogle County. Mike just north of Forston checking in this evening with some fog. Actually had a little bit of sunshine kind of peer through some of the cloud cover yesterday, but he's got a foggy and cloudy sky out there. So we hang on to the clouds as we go through the night tonight. Winds will be coming in tomorrow from the east and northeast. You see a couple of lake-induced flurries working in towards the lakeshore here of Lake Michigan. Some of those could push a little further west as we go through the afternoon. So I'm not going to completely rule out the possibility of a few passing flurries, kind of similar to what we had very early this morning, which was enough to provide just a little bit of a coating on some of the roadways, but the cloud cover does stay with us. So 25 degrees tonight, and again, fog and freezing fog. Tomorrow we're up to 35, so pretty similar to where we were for today. Those temperatures, not a lot of movement up or down in the next several days as we stay in the lower 30s. And guys, our overnight lows, we'll see the numbers drop off a little bit here, back down into the teens by early next week.
We all know it could be a lot colder, so I guess we take what we get, right? Candice, thanks.
Scott's in next with sports.
The clock is ticking loudly on high school sports. Can they be salvaged in Illinois? Scott runs down some possible scenarios.
Now, the Napleton Sports Desk with Sports Director Scott Leber.
Time keeps marching on, and crickets continue to chirp as far as high school sports competitions are concerned in Illinois. The IHSA is still stuck in a holding pattern, waiting to get further information from the Illinois Department of Public Health. The IHSA's next board meeting is next Wednesday, January 13th. The board is trying to arrange a meeting with the Department of Public Health before that date. Now, as you know, the winter sports season never got off the ground like it was supposed to in November. All sports were paused because of another uptick in coronavirus. The start of the fall sports that were pushed to the spring, including football, is now less than 2 months away. Everyone is getting antsy, from coaches to players to parents. It's becoming obvious that we are running out of time to hold all three winter, fall, and spring sports. In fact, I don't see any way they can all be held now, even with the spring sports being pushed deep into June. The way I see it is the IHSA has three options. One is to scrap the winter sports season, especially since we're not likely to see any movement here on competitions until late this month at the earliest. Cancel the winter sports season and stick with the target date of an early March start for football, volleyball, and the other fall sports that were pushed back, then dive into spring sports. The second option is hold a condensed winter season and scrap the fall sports. That might be logical because the fall sports have already been thrown off kilter, getting pushed to March. Plus, small schools might not have enough football players to field teams because some of their best athletes will opt out to prepare for their preferred spring sports. The third option is to scrap both the winter sports and fall sports seasons and proceed with a full schedule of spring sports. The spring sports will be the last to get cut for two reasons. One, spring sports are the safest because most of them are held outdoors. Athletes in softball and baseball are naturally distanced, plus those sports in track and field involve very little contact. Also, it would be fitting for spring sports to be held because those are the only sports that got wiped out by COVID the last school year. At least athletes in those sports wouldn't miss out on 2 years of competing. Sadly, none of these options is a good option, especially for the teenagers who compete in them. We can hope for all three sports seasons still, but realistically, my gut tells me we might only see spring sports. That's my take. We'll be right back.
Our first Warning Interactive radar brought to us by Rockford Auto Glass and More. Skies are going to stay cloudy, and we've got the fog coming in too. Another dense fog advisory issued for portions of south central Wisconsin and northwest Illinois. It'd be nice if we were able to see some sunshine. I think the clouds are going to stick around here. We might get a couple of breaks here and there, but generally speaking, a mostly cloudy sky that'll take us straight into the weekend and even early next week. A couple of flurries possible for tomorrow afternoon. A little more active pattern though, which could bring a colder snap by the end of next week.
All right, thanks, Candice.
And thank you for spending time with us. Stay safe.